This week is week 3 of a 5-week cycle that repeats. And in the first week, we covered all the different strategies. You've got to have that in your brain, right? All the different strategies, the different types of deal structures that we use to get deals done with the sellers. Now, hold on, guys, hold on. All right, so yeah, you've got to have those deal structures in your head, okay? That is book knowledge, and you need to be able to draw on that. Before you really do draw on that, you're going to be needing to understand what our approach is with the seller. How do we get the seller to understand what it is that we can do and how it is that we can help them? And there's a particular script that we use to bring that to fruition for the seller. Okay, that's the seller script that we went through last week. And in addition to doing it yourself, there's the script for having an assistant make the initial call out to the seller after you've done a couple, 2, 3 deals and are making money. And then, of course, your posture as a real estate investor, how you want to roll, how you want to come across when you're talking to these folks on the phone. Okay, so we have a strategy. We have an initial approach that we covered in the first 2 weeks, extremely important. And then there's this week. This week is all about the dialogue that occurs between you and the seller. It's the dialogue that gets the deals done. It's the ebb and flow that occurs with the seller, where they have all kinds of concerns, objections, questions, so that they can make a determination on whether or not they want to operate in a way that makes sense for us. And if they choose not to, we've got an alternative plan. They aren't going to escape, if you will, the fact that no matter what they decide to do, we can service that. Now, whether they choose to cooperate with you or not is going to be a function of how they perceive your character and your competency, how you come across from an authenticity standpoint and how you come across from an expertise standpoint, because they're going to have to make a decision on selling it in the way we want to buy it or selling it in a more traditional way, in which case they're going to need the help of a realtor, which you can channel. Okay, so when you combine strategy with approach, with then the questions that come up and your ability to answer those questions competently, that is going to comprise the majority of your effectiveness as a real estate investor. You have got to be able to conduct this seller phone call in a way that makes people comfortable enough to work with you. If you do not do that, I do not care how fancy your software is, how fancy your CRM is, how fancy you are as a person, how much credit you have, how much money you have. None of that matters if you can't handle the seller phone call. The focus has to be on getting good with the seller phone call. Now, does that mean that you're going to be some kind of snake charmer that's where you get everybody to just come to you? No. But it does mean that you're going to give the best possible answers that are truthful, transparent, to the point, and direct, so you can help the seller make a decision that they were going to make one way or another. Now, it is true that sometimes we can move people that are close over the line to where they'll do a certain deal. But you really aren't going to persuade somebody to do something that they just don't want to do. Okay, so quit begging, pleading, and trying to over negotiate things. It doesn't work. Okay, look, I've worked with some of the best, right? I've done all kinds of JV deals with Ron LeGrand. He might be one of the best negotiators there is, if you know who he is. I've been on the phone with him many, many times. And if he ain't going to convince them, then they're not to be convinced. And one of the things that I learned very quickly working so closely with Ron is to get to the conclusion with people at lightning speed. And he was very good at that, and I'm getting better at it, right? So what I'd say is the majority of your effectiveness is really contained within what we talked about 2 weeks ago, what we talked about last week, and what we're going to talk about this week. Because the next 2 weeks after this week are about putting the contracts together. That's just memorization, experience. I'll even do that for you. Don't have to worry about that too much. And then the marketing, which also is just a matter of what I've really come to is I want you to learn it, but I'd rather you hire it out. But hire it out in a very specific way and then inspect what you expect, because I don't want you all to become expert digital marketers. You need to be expert real estate investors on the phone with the sellers. That's where the deals are made. So this is the third week of the most important aspect of the program, which is the seller phone call. Okay. Now, having said all that, let's make sure that we understand exactly what it is that we're talking about here. And I won't take you through a whole review of what we talked about over the last couple of weeks, but ultimately every seller, let me just pull it up real quick and share it. Ultimately, every seller, still having Zoom problems apparently. I can see that almost crashed. All right. Every seller is going to operate in this paradigm or in this paradigm. These are the deals we want to get, right? Which I'll explain in a second. But the seller is going to choose between one of two things every single time. Either they're going to give somebody a great price or great terms, which means that they're going to sell to an investor, or they're going to do things the traditional way, which means that there's going to be a realtor involved. Because all of the buyers who are bank qualified, who can bring in a loan of hundreds of thousands of dollars, who are going to pay full price for that seller's house in cash, those people are all represented by realtors. Because why wouldn't they be? It's free to them as a buyer. The seller pays the freight on that. So we can make this case to the seller that if they have a $300,000 house, they're going to pay a significant portion of that house's value in the fees of sale, real estate commission. Buyers want a discount generally. There's closing costs. Well, we'll pay their closing costs. They might pay points on a buyer's loan to bring the loan down to where the buyer can actually afford the monthly payment. While they're waiting for the bank committee to approve that buyer, and while they're waiting for the realtor to sell it or for them to sell it, there's going to be mortgage payments they have to make, utility payments, tax prorations, appraisal, survey, inspection concessions at the last second. Hey, when that realtor sees all the boxes are moved, that's when they go to work on you. They know you need to close now, right? When they're doing that walkthrough a day before you're supposed to close, there's going to be an inspection concession. There's going to be a home warranty. At the end of the day, that 300 doesn't look like 300 anymore. It looks more like, 250, 260. So if you want to do that, we're not going to make a value judgment on the seller for doing things this way. That's fine. They want to get their cash now as much as they can. And if that's the cost of doing damn business, then that's what they'll do. What we're talking about, however, is a plan where they get to keep all the money that their house has earned and all the money that they've earned. In other words, the equity that the house has built up and the value of the house, they're going to get that. It's not dialed back by real estate commissions, buyer discounts, closing costs, and all these other fees. If the value is 300, they're going to get 300. Plus, we're going to pay them monthly. Now, is it a panacea? Is it perfect? No, because there's a trade-off over here in this green box as well. That trade-off is you have to be willing to exercise a little bit of patience and let me pay you for that. I'll make a monthly payment to you until we pay you off in full. But you're going to keep all the money that you and the house has earned. Whereas over here, you're going to pay a hefty price to get all that money right now. And what are you going to do with the money anyway? If you put it in the bank, even with interest rates having raised up as much as they are, you still aren't getting a very good return, right? The banks aren't even giving 1% interest, even given their rates have gone up. The federal funds rate is has gone up, like what, 400% or something like that. So, but the banks aren't passing that along at this point for savings. So keeping the money in the house for a little while and letting me do my thing, pay you monthly and get you all 300 might be a better investment for you. You tell me what you would prefer to do. Okay, so effectively, we're going to be having that kind of a conversation with folks, right? If they choose over here, we can help them. If they choose over here, we can help them. But it is a binary decision. Now, once they have indicated that which trade-off they're going to take, we move them through the script like I talked about last week. If they happen to be of the mindset to say, well, I might be willing to take a payment, tell me more. Well, yes, I'd like to get more money. How does that work? In other words, they're a yes to the possibility of accepting a monthly payment over a time, or they're a maybe to the possibility of accepting payments over time. Now, mind you, the majority of sellers are not going to fit in that camp. If the majority of sellers fit in that camp, this business would be even easier than it already is, and literally everybody would be doing it. You have to be willing to do things that others won't, which means talking to people a little bit. And when you do that, it's a very high-paying job, as I showed you. Look, 100 people sounds like a lot of people to call, but you could get through 100 people in 25 hours, which means 1 hour per day for less than a month. You could get through 100 people. And if you have any, if you're at an acceptable level of being able to administer the seller phone call, you should have at least one $25,000 deal out of that set of 100 people, at least. Not to mention potentially getting more, but let's just say worst case scenario. So that means that's like $1,000 an hour, because you can get through, if you average 15 minutes per seller, which is on average, some are going to be more, some are going to be less. That means you could get through 4 people in an hour, right? So you could get through 125 hours, meaning in a month, you could easily talk to 100 people, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually not. It's an hour a day for a month. And you'd have 25 grand, probably a lot more than that. But with 25 grand, that means it's $1,000 an hour or $250 a call. Or you could look at it, because like I said, most people aren't going to be willing to take monthly payments. You could look at that as every time somebody tells you no, you just made $250, right? So if 99 people tell you to sit and spin, so what? You made $250 every time, getting through to the one person who is willing to work with you, and you pick up 25 grand. Now, luckily, the other 99 people who you don't do deals with are still going to do something we can service. And that's why we have the plans where we utilize realtor services, or we get a license ourselves. Okay. And that becomes a massive ancillary revenue stream. So getting back to that call, you're on the phone with the seller. Now you're totally chilled. Now you're totally chilled because you know they decide A, they decide B. You can help. And we have an approach for whatever they decide they want to do. Among all the people that you're going to talk to, some of them are going to be like, well, I might be, tell me more. Well, how would that exactly work? Yeah, I've heard of that. How does that actually go down? Well, I need money for a down payment on a new house. Or, well, how long is it going to take? Well, how much are you going to put down? That's all the stuff we're going to talk about this week, right? But ultimately what happens is the people who are yeses and maybes to taking payments, we are they're going to have questions, and we have to be able to answer those questions, and that's where the deal is made. And as we go through answering those questions, remember what our ultimate goal is, which is what I talked about last week. Our ultimate goal is to let the seller make us the offer. Stop making offers to sellers. You haven't even seen the house yet. Let's learn what the seller is willing to do and what they're not willing to do. Meaning, we don't make any kind of offer to the seller other than saying, hey, the purpose of this call is to tell you I love the house and I want to buy the house. I haven't seen the house in person yet, so I don't have an offer for you yet, but let's examine what you're willing to do. I don't want to do it as the buyer if I have to give you full retail price cash right now, because I would rather reserve that cash that I have for a property that I can get at a discount from a bank. That doesn't mean I don't want to buy your house. I still do want to buy your house, and I'll give you full price and you'll get more money from me than you will from anybody else. However, you have to be a little bit patient in getting it. I'll either rent it from you for a period of time with the option to buy it during the term of our lease, or I'll make you monthly payments against whatever price we agree to if you really want to sell it, until you get paid off in full. So if you're open to that, then let's talk about that. Okay, well, how much are you going to give me? Well, I don't know. We need to establish basically 4 things. Okay, so let me walk you through that. We need to establish price. First of all, what's the best you can do on that price? And then we take them through the negotiation cascade that I talked about last week. Then we need to learn, in addition to price, what the monthly payment is going to be. And we take them through the flow with respect to the monthly payment. Then we need to learn what they're willing to do in terms of time frame, duration, term, how long till they have to be paid in full. And we walk them through the negotiation cascade on that. And then we do the exact same thing with respect to when our payments begin, meaning, is there going to be a down payment? Hopefully not. If there is, and there's a specific way that we go about that, which I described last week. If there is, then we want to find out how close to zero can we get, because we're going to have a lot of money into this thing up front from the beginning. And we learn those 4 metrics: price, monthly, duration, down. It's not what we want to offer them. It's what they're willing to do. They said they'd be willing to, in order to get this full price, they're willing to be a little bit patient. So we have to learn what they're willing to do. I don't want to counter offer them because I don't even know if they mean what they say. I'm just going to tell you guys, you're going to get a lot of people who say they would do things on the phone, and then you go out to visit the house and you stay there for hours and hours, and you never get the deal done, and you wasted a shitload of time. I don't want you doing that. Okay. Let's learn what they're willing to do, and then let's put it to the test. Okay. Well, I'm going to send you the paperwork based on what you said. You said this price, this monthly, this duration, this down. So I'm going to send you paperwork. You're good to go with those terms, right? And if they are, they should send the paperwork back. If they won't, then you've got more talking to do. And I'd rather do the talking on the phone than getting all fixed up and going to the house, right? And wasting all day with somebody who never intended to actually, they think they're going to somehow woo you with the house when the house doesn't matter to you. It's just a box. You just care about the terms. Okay. So with that in mind, that's your basic structure, but you have to be good at handling their questions and concerns and potential objections that come up on the phone. So that's what we're going to do all week. Okay. Now let me dive into that for a sec. First of all, the last time we were in this cycle, so to speak, of 5 weeks, right? Where we talk about strategy, approach, objection handling, contracts, and then in week 5, marketing. The objection handling, I did a very condensed version. I did a full objection handling workshop in 1 hour. I think that is a good tape to listen to while you're walking your dog, while you're on the treadmill, while you're on an airplane, while you're sitting in traffic, whatever the case may be. Shopping at the grocery store, whatever it is, some mundane activity that you probably shouldn't be doing anyway. Later on, you'll have a personal assistant do all that stuff for you so you can be productive. But I mean, you don't have to, but I still like to go grocery shopping. I like to just kind of pick stuff off the shelves, but nonetheless, playing that into your head over and over and over again is going to get you to the point where you can respond more rhythmically with the seller. You're going to have heard how to handle various objections and questions, and it'll come out through your own personality, because my personality is probably a little bit different than we're alike in more ways than we're different. That's why I accepted you in the program, really, because I know I can work with you guys. But there's going to be a little bit different style with respect to things, right? I mean, a lot of you wouldn't be caught dead wearing an Oakland A's hat with long hair, looking like, Freddy Krueger or whatever. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't articulate the features, the benefits, and the rationale to sellers in a way that is going to get you deals. So I would suggest you go back, listen to that our seminar, or you could go back, obviously in the static training. I go through all the objections very thoroughly, like I'm going to do this week. But if you want a quick and dirty presentation on all the different, there's 30 of them, right? Objections that can come up. I haven't heard a new one in a decade, probably. You're not going to get anything new that comes at you. It's going to be a variation on the theme, if anything. And you'll be able to answer those questions. And once you have that committed to memory, it's just like multiplication tables. It looked like a daunting task when you were a kid and you looked at all those things that you had to memorize, but now it's super, super easy because you've multiplied 8 times 6, 50 million times, right? So the same thing with the objections. Once you get used to what the answers are, not that they're going to snake charm somebody into having your way, but it's the best possible answer you can give to do what we want to do on the phone. Okay. Think of what you're doing on the phone, not as, I got to get this deal. I got to get this deal. That makes you come across needy. Think of it as you're going to qualify this person or disqualify this person, and the sooner the better. Same thing with romantic relationships, right? Girls, you want to get either see if you like the guy or not quickly. Guys, when you talk to the girl, you want to know quickly, is she down or not? Okay, we're trying to qualify and disqualify. Don't hope. It's not a good strategy. We're qualifying and disqualifying. And the best way to do that is to be straight up honest and be straight up truthful with folks about what all this entails, even if you think they're not going to like the answer. Okay. All right. So I would suggest you check that out. Now I'm going to go much slower than what I did the last time we were in this cycle, which was 5 weeks ago. I'm going to go slower because I want to go through each objection carefully.